Welcome to the Win-Win Evangelism Podcast. My name's Dr. Tina Waldrom. In a nation where fewer people are exposed to the message of Jesus, it's more important than ever for churches and believers to be equipped to share their faith in genuine and culturally relevant ways. I'm the Director of Evangelism in Australia, and for the past 30 plus years, I've been training and equipping churches and believers to share their faith in relevant ways. Each week, this podcast will help you do exactly that. Enjoy the weekly interviews and teachings, and be sure to check out the questions in the show notes. These questions are designed so that you can use them in your church small group or simply by yourself. We're here to win, win, win. I have a great discussion for you today. Absolutely intriguing. I'm talking to Pastor Rob Martin from All Nations Congregation at Northcote Baptist Church in Victoria. Now, here's the kicker. Rob is also heading a team for the Ideas Convention that's happening at Belgrave Heights in Victoria in August, coming up very soon with some amazing speakers. Why every worldview collapses without Christ at the centre? Well, that's a great discussion. Welcome to you, Rob.
Great to be here.
And 7+ years also running the Bigger Questions podcast. That was amazing, and many times you've been on our show, so I'll drop that in the show notes as well for people to look at those bigger questions that we discussed back in previous recordings. So why every worldview collapses without Christ at the centre is really at the crux of this Ideas Convention coming up. What does it mean to you personally, and why is this message so timely right now, Rob?
Well, thanks, Tina. And thanks for the little plug about Bigger Questions as well. I know as a fellow content creator, I know the challenges of putting together a podcast and a radio show and so on. So anyway, it was a great journey, but I'm on sort of a new path now in some sense with working at Northcote Baptist Church, but also heading up this Ideas Convention, which is a brand new convention really trying to equip Christians in the Bible to give them confidence to engage our culture with confidence. And so for me personally, I suppose it's one of the things I reflect on as we look out in the world. And I suppose if you take away any sort of sense of spirituality or anything, like the world just kind of feels empty. And I feel that's the way a lot of secular people now, the secularism being such a dominant sort of worldview, there's no God. There's just, basically what we are as people, and we just make of the world what we can. The problem with that is that it just empties the world of sort of deeper meaning and purpose. And some of the rich and beautiful things we love about life, like beauty and love and hope and purpose, sort of evaporate. And so unfortunately, I feel like our current culture really feels empty and meaningless. And so hence I feel like there's one of our speakers at the conventions has been talking about what he describes as a meaning crisis. That in our world today, a lot of people who have rejected religion or organized religion or anything like that, but sort of tried to find a path in the world today and have found that there's a lack of meaning. And I suppose that's even my journey. I have contemplated, because there's things we give up as going into Christian ministry or to be a Christian today, because it can be a challenge at times. And so you wonder, is it worth giving this up? And so you look around, I could have made this, made that. But one of the big things that I reflect on is that there really could, if there wasn't any spirituality or anything there, the world does just feel meaningless and pointless. Like there's the universe, it's there, and then you're here for a few years, then you're gone, and that's it. And so, but I feel like that really is, it's not articulated well, but I think it's underneath the surface of so many people in our culture today. And sometimes even myself as well, I sort of feel this sort of sense of purpose, meaning, is there any point to it all? And so that's really, I suppose, underlying what we're really trying to grapple with and reflect on in Ideas 2025, the Ideas Convention at Belgrave Heights.
Yeah, I love that. And how do I, as a believer, engage with people that are in that space, which is what I love about this connection of what you've always done, kind of in this apologetics space and this evangelism space and this connection between the two, which is a very tight connection. How did you even get involved, first of all, with the convention? Like, you're a senior pastor of a church, surely you're busy enough.
Well, actually, I was part-time when I started. I was part-time at the church. Now I'm not part-time, so it does make life a little bit more challenging. Well, I suppose it's because of my previous work at City Bible Forum, and it was something that's driven me personally. Like, I suppose one thing that drives me personally, and maybe this comes back to maybe answering your previous question maybe a bit more fully, is if the Christian message is not true, then we have given up a lot for a lie. And so I suppose for me, I'm just trying to work out, is the Christian message true? Is it believable? Is it good? And because if it isn't, then I don't really want to believe it, and I don't really want to live it, because there's lots of other things I could do with my life than sharing the good news of Jesus. But I suppose that's why apologetics, I feel, is really important, to help give some confidence, to feel like actually the message we share, a message we own, particularly when life is tough, and particularly when you feel that you have sacrificed a lot for the gospel, then you want to make sure that you've made that sacrifice is worthwhile. And so hence, that's why I think it drives one of my passions for apologetics, because I don't want to believe a lie, and I don't want to live for something that's just not true or doesn't make sense or is incoherent in the world. So that's been driven my passion for apologetics, I suppose, for many years. In fact, it came when I was actually at Bible college about 15 years ago or so, and I read Richard Dawkins' God Delusion book, which actually really shook my faith. I'd been a believer pretty much my whole life. I was well taught, but here I was shaken by, in the end, what proved to be very bad arguments against the Christianity. But it shook me, and it made me realize, I think, more deeply about my faith and the reasons for why I believe. And so in the end, the irony of the whole thing is Richard Dawkins, I say, convinced me to become more committed to my Christianity. As a result, his attempt at trying to convince people to become atheists actually backfired from him. Deep down, though, that is for me the reason for apologetics, to understand, are there good reasons to believe the faith that we have? And so I suppose that shaped my previous role at City Bible Forum and doing my Bigger Questions podcast. And so then I suppose I had a natural experience there that when the opportunity came up a couple of years ago, when Belgrave Heights Convention were wanting to begin a sort of apologetics or ideas kind of convention to engage some of these big ideas, to try to make big ideas accessible in the real world, then I felt like I probably had some experience and some connections and some expertise in this space. And so I thought I'd happily try to help out and try to lead the team. And so that's kind of what's happened for the last couple of years.
Very exciting. What a great convention. And I love the idea of big ideas and not so much using the word apologetics, which so many of the generations coming through, it's a little bit, they find that not so friendly to engage with.
Well, that's right, because we were thinking of using the word apologetics, but I thought apologetics can have a bit of a negative connotation, as though we're just a bunch of nerdy guys. I mean, I do wear glasses, but a bunch of nerdy guys sitting around debating the fine points of particularly philosophical arguments. But I feel like it would just be a disservice to that sort of idea. So we just thought, and ideas are broader than, I suppose, apologetics. And so we wanted to say ideas have consequences. And we wanted to try to, again, as I said, make big ideas, the big ideas of our culture, of contrary to the Christian faith, we wanted to make them accessible to a broader audience. And that's really what we're trying to do with Ideas 2025, Ideas Convention, or more broadly.
Yeah, very exciting. There are many worldviews out there, Rob. What are some of the most common worldviews that you feel that people are engaging with, and why are they still leaving people without that sense of fulfillment?
Well, that's a good question, and it does depend a bit about where you live in terms of who your neighbours are. Like, so if you're in I live in Melbourne, sort of inner city Melbourne, and so I think some of the dominant worldviews are really, and I think they're interrelated, is materialism and hedonism. So the idea of material well-being and also just having fun, enjoying life, etc. And so, because I mean, it's represented by, it's one of the reasons I love living in Brunswick, is because, there's great cafes, because, there's great food, great experiences, great opportunities. And I think that really drives a lot of people. Feel like there's a drive for experience and for, overseas travel, all really, really good things. But the problem with all the experiences is that they end. And then there's always a finish and a finite point, and you've got to try to find the next experience and the next thing. And I think once you've realized that there's almost like a treadmill that you go on, you go to one overseas trip, and as soon as you come back, then you're looking forward to the next one. In fact, I remember I overheard a friend of mine a couple of years ago, lives here in Brunswick in the inner city of Melbourne. They'd just come back from an overseas trip to Europe. And they made the comment, says, I need to plan another trip because I need something to look forward to. And I just thought that's really interesting. That's obviously what drives the worldview. And it's true, we need something to look forward to. But I feel like when you remove a hope of, say, a heaven or of a eternal life or of some sort of metaphysical sort of change, then really you only have what's in this world to look forward to. And so hence things like materialism materialism I think underlies hedonism. You need to have money in order to have fun. Because if you're just looking to survive, then life is not really that fun. But that's why we are pretty wealthy now we're very wealthy actually in modern Australia generally. And so hence I think hedonism in particular is one of the big drivers. And connected to that I think is also work. So hence people are looking for fulfillment and for meaning and purpose through their work. And so hence a lot of people put so much energy and effort into their work these days. And so I remember listening, there's one commentator or one author once said that she doesn't work at a job. Basically, she is her career. That is who she is. It became almost a sense of identity. It was about her career. It's who he was and who she was and who she was working to be was her career. I am my job. So hence, I feel like that some of the big sort of worldviews that shape certainly secular modern Australia. Of course, if you go to other parts of the world, other parts of Australia, there are different religions as well. Like there's Islam, for example, is growing in other parts. And so that's a very different sort of perspective. But I'd say that secular Australia is driven by materialism and hedonism. And underlying that, I suppose, is the idea of finding your fulfillment and your meaning through your work.
Yeah, and just hearing you say that in my mind, it is giving me so many thoughts and ideas of how, because I can see that with my friends, I can see that with the people that I'm in community with and I'm doing life with, but just being able to raise a question to them about that, because like you're saying, they feel a certain way, they're looking for the next holiday, just to be able to articulate that as a Christian to somebody and prod a little bit is a great way to open up some really deep spiritual conversations. What would be some of the wins for people that you're wanting people to get that come to the convention? And I'm coming to the convention. I'm so excited. What are some of the things that you are hoping that people walk away with feeling more confident about, I guess?
Well, you've just touched on what I really want people to walk away with confidence. Confidence that actually Jesus is really good news. And I suppose, and you can put it against the society. Like, I mean, in some sense, you could think, how could Jesus be better than an overseas trip to Europe? You know, if you compare that, if that's what, or buying my dream house in my dream suburb and having the dog and the family and those sort of things like that, they're the dreams, they're the sort of the aspirations of so many people here in Australia. And at times we feel like we're pitching Jesus against that and sort of say, well, actually, how can you compete with, an overseas trip or other things like, but I feel like I suppose what we're going to do is to help people to understand that those things are good. I don't want to dismiss, travel or material blessings and so on. Absolutely not at the same time. But I want to put them into a proper perspective. And so people can sort of see that, yes, they're good, but they can't provide ultimate meaning for us. And you have to come to the convention to find out exactly why that is. So I'm not, but in the end, ultimately they will fail. And there's only one thing that won't fail, and that's actually Jesus. And again, I want to give a couple of hints, but I don't want to. I'll be giving the sort of the keynote message on the Friday night to sort of explain, I think, some of the reasons why Jesus can do that. But I said, I don't want to be dismissive of those things to say that they're bad. That's one way. Sometimes Christians certainly in the past have done that and say, well, reject the world, say that the world's a bad place, etc. I'm not going to say that. I think they're good things, but they need to be put into their proper perspective. And so that we can see that actually when we do that, we can see that there's limits to how much they can give us true ultimate satisfaction and meaning in life.
Let me ask you a question. Are you equipped to share your faith? Is your church ready to do the same? Our evangelism training helps both individual believers and church leaders foster a culture of evangelism. It equips everyday Christians to have natural faith conversations and provides pastors with the tools to train their church. With flexible online resources, you can learn at your own pace, anytime, anywhere. Don't leave evangelism to chance. Visit evangelisminaustralia.com to get started. I can see from looking at the website for the convention, which I'll have in the show notes for people as well to click onto, I can see that it's very appropriate, the convention, for Christians, obviously, but also for those in my world that are non-Christians that are in that space of, I know the ones that are open, Rob, like I know the ones that are ready to go the next level. Is this the type of space, it looks like it, that I could bring people to?
Definitely. I mean, there'll be assumptions at times. They'll be singing and some prayer and so on at different points. But the assumption, we're not going to assume that everyone is necessarily completely on board with the Christian message or understanding it all. And I suppose that's one of the reasons we're running the convention, is so that people can just understand their faith better. So I think there's people that you have been Christians for a while, but have not always, they know Jesus, they love Jesus, that's great, and they have a basic faith. But in terms of trying to answer or explore some more difficult or challenging questions or opposition, like they've never really done that before. And so hence, I think once you hear some sort of potential challenges to your faith, you think, well, I don't know what to do. This is where the convention becomes really useful, because it helps in a safe place to actually help people to explore, learn and grow so that they can actually engage more difficult and challenging questions in their faith. But if they haven't a faith at all, then it's ideal, really, because we are exploring some of the biggest questions of life. Like, is there purpose to life? Is there meaning? Why Jesus as opposed to anything else? Like, I mean, really, you can't get many bigger questions than what we're exploring this weekend. And this is why it's a bit of a unique opportunity to get those thoughts and those ideas and those questions together. And so if you do have people or friends, as you said, Tina, if you've got friends who are thinking in this space and are open to reflection, then it'd be a great place for them to explore and come. And they're not going to get pressured. There's no altar calls or anything like that. And so it's just going to be an opportunity just to explore and find out and grow.
Yeah, it's very exciting. I'm very excited to see that this is happening in Victoria and going forward. Tell me about some of the speakers, because there's some really well-known speakers that are going to be sharing, and I, for one, pretty excited about that. Yeah, no, we're delighted to be able to get some outstanding speakers. We've got actually a very international group, mainly because we were trying to pursue some local, so people to come in person, but that just wasn't going to work out either financially or economically or other things. So what we decided to do, we're actually getting some fantastic speakers, but we're going to bring them in live via electronic means, so via Zoom conversation or so. But it still means that we're going to have an interactive conversation. It's like they're there. It's just that they're not actually physically there, if that makes sense. But it also makes it a lot cheaper. I mean, otherwise we'd have to be, the convention would be costing thousands of dollars, which I don't think anyone would be coming if that was the case. Friday night, we've got a brilliant conversation with Justin Briley. So Justin used to run the Unbelievable podcast. So he's written a book called The Surprising Rebirth of Belief in God. And this is, I think, one of the best introductions to the Christian faith I've read in recent years. It's an outstanding reflection of, he's interviewed so many of the world's leading thinkers in the whole faith area. And he's just observed in the last 10 years or so that there has been a rebirth of belief in God. Whereas 15 years ago, the whole atheism thing, the new atheism, people like Richard Dawkins, etc., and Sam Harris were all dominant in their thinking, and everyone felt like, that it wasn't a matter of if, but when Christianity and religion was just going to be wiped from the face of the earth. But actually, the new atheism then promised a lot but delivered very little. And Justin was sort of there because he was interviewing many of these people throughout that process. And he documents in this book, and also in our conversation that we're having with him, about that journey and how, in the end, secularism, atheism failed. And in the end, there's this bunch of secular thinkers who have now re-embraced Christianity and realized that actually there's something to this that people had previously dismissed. And so there's some amazing stories that he shares in his book, and we've got a great conversation with him. So we're excited, really excited. And he's the one that helped me see this meaning crisis. That's what he really hones in on and talks about, that yes, we rejected it, the atheism came, rejected everything, but in the end, there was something about us as humans and our experience that actually we need more than just atoms and molecules and energy and matter. We need meaning, purpose, and those sort of wonderful things. So Justin's going to be coming, and he's going to be sharing, which is just fantastic. We've also got Sean McDowell. So he's going to come from the United States, tuning in. He's going to give us a lot of reflections on the reasons to believe. And so he's obviously grew up in
a very famous family. His dad was a very famous author and sort of thinker. And so, but Sean himself, I suppose, he's got some great things to share. We also have Vishal Mangalwadi, which some people are really excited about that we've got him. He's written a book called The Book That Made Your World. And so he's really looking at saying that actually the Bible has shaped the Western culture and the world in a far more profound way than many people have ever expected or understood. It's quite controversial to say that, especially in modern secular culture. So he's going to come and talk a bit about how other worldviews just couldn't shape the world the way that the Christian faith has, or the Bible has shaped it. And so he's going to be coming. He's originally from India, but now based in the US. And also we have another woman, Mary Jo Sharp, who is actually a former atheist. And so she has been converted. And so she's going to share a bit about her story and about how the rationale behind that and why anything other than Jesus failed. So in the end, but we also there's a couple of other testimonies as well on the Friday night. We've got a couple of other people, locals, going to be sharing their testimony in person. So there's opportunity for Q&A and for other things. And so it's going to be fantastic. And unfortunately, you've also got me. I'm going to be giving the sort of the Bible input on the Friday night. And so I'll be sharing, I basically try to provide the biblical framework for why anything but Jesus fails. And also I'm going to be co-hosted and helped very ably by Dr. Gillian Asquith, who's helping to MC the whole thing as well. She's going to be bringing her insights as well. She'll be sharing a bit on the Saturday morning as well. We've got a rich and wonderful feast of international and local speakers that I think is just outstanding. So I'm really excited about what's going to happen in a few weeks' time.
Yeah, it's so exciting, and I love the fact that you're having those speakers and it's all live. So we're talking to them in real time, which is going to be amazing. And to have them all in the same convention, so to speak, is very exciting. Is there a topic, Rob, that you personally are like, oh, I'm really excited about wanting to hear that?
Can I just say at all? We're addressing the one sort of key thing about why everything other than Jesus fails, or other worldviews collapse without Jesus at the center. The thing that I'm excited about is that every speaker is going to be sort of looking at that, but they're going to come at a different angle. So it's like you've got this paint or this sculpture in the middle of the room, and everyone's just going to see different elements of it to make it, I think, a very full and rich experience. And so that's why I think it excites me, actually, because they're all going to say, well, basically going to ask them all the same question about, why anything but Jesus fails. But they're all going to have slightly different emphases and answers. And I think that's what I'm really excited about, just to see the richness and feel like it's got a full meal, I suppose. It's like when you've had a big meal and you haven't just eaten chips or, there's popcorn or whatever it is you might have. You haven't just had one dish, you've had a whole feast, and there's just such a rich and wonderful little smorgasbord of things to get from the different speakers. So that's what I think I'm looking forward to, getting those different perspectives.
I'm so excited just hearing more and more about it. But, one of the things that Christians really struggle with, well, not all Christians, so I take that back, not everybody, but what is very difficult to convey to people that are not Christians is that to the claim of Jesus that he's the only way, he's it. And I guess this conference is, in a way, addressing that, why everything else is failing without Christ at the centre. And I'm assuming that it's going to give me more ways that I can boldly try and communicate that truth to people.
Yeah, yes, it is. Yes, exactly. And I suppose it'll do it partly by seeing where, I think you do two things at once. You'll see how everything else will fail, but also how Jesus succeeds. So it's not just a negative conference and just pointing out all of the, all the problems with other worldviews and so on, or that there will be an element of that. But that's not because we're trying to be negative to the world. We're just trying to be realistic and provide proper perspective on how well these things actually can provide a true well-being. Like if secularism worked, like if secularism really did give us true meaning and purpose, and the new atheism, etc., offered us the true gospel, so to speak, then there wouldn't be this meaning crisis in the world today. There wouldn't be these holes that people feel that actually there's something missing, there's a problem with our world, and you wouldn't have books like this by Justin Briley being written. So that's why you need to sort of see the full implication of why it fails before you can see. I think that'll help people get more confident and say, actually, Jesus is good news. And it'll give us, I think, confidence to realize that my friend who's maybe sad or lonely or depressed or whatever, actually giving them Jesus really is good news. It's not just a message that I'm giving, it's actually life-giving, not just in an eternal sort of spiritual sense, but it really actually will help make people's lives better now because they have a greater sense of purpose and of well-being. And I think the more and more I've reflected on this, I feel like Jesus really is good news, not just because, he died for our sins and gives us eternal life that when we die, we get to be with him. But it's also true and meaningful and rich life now. And I think that's something that I think can really give us confidence to know that, even when it might be difficult or there's opposition, but I feel like that can really give us confidence to do that.
100%. It gives people the answers, Rob. I've got a number of friends in my life that are married and wanting to explore some very strange things, and they've been married for years because they feel this sense of meaningless. And Jesus is the answer, but how we convey that to that type of a person is crucial. And so this convention, the Ideas Convention coming up in Belgrave Heights in Victoria, is going to be really key for me and for many others of how that we can start to engage with some of these true concepts and unpack them with people that don't know Jesus.
Exactly. You'll get some insights, perspectives, and I think just a bit of clarity that can help just get some confidence. And also just sometimes just some encouragement, just to say, actually, maybe I will just invite my friend to church, or maybe I open up the Bible with them and say, hey, I've just been thinking about, meaning and purpose, and I feel like Jesus gives me meaning in life. Maybe would you like to investigate that, if that's something that you struggle with, or something along those lines. You could just say, just open up the first 18 verses of John's Gospel. It's, I think, one of the most profound 18 sentences ever written, and it's just kind of provides the sort of the cosmic brilliance of Jesus in a post-war world where in the beginning was nothing, which nothing exploded, and now, then we have dinosaurs. Like, that's kind of what the atheist world sort of, says happened. And so in the end, you're just slime plus time. Is that it? There's something more. But I think having the wisdom to think about what kind of good questions you could ask your friends and your neighbors and your colleagues is good. And that's the other opportunity you have at a conference like this. It's going to be a good number of people, but there'll be opportunity just to connect with people and ask them and talk about how they find sharing these things as well. And I think it's an opportunity just to connect and meet new people.
Yeah, absolutely. Amen. Well, what I'm also going to do is I'm going to list some books as well in our show notes. Rob's been alluding to a couple, and we'll put some others in there for you as well that you can start to engage with if you're a reader or you want to get the audio book and listen to those. It'll really help you as well in this space. So, Rob, this has been a great discussion. I want to encourage again, as a listener, consider coming to the convention, consider being skilled up in this area. It's going to be fabulous. Rob, thank you so much for your time, and I cannot wait for the convention.
Thanks so much, Tina. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you.